Hello everyone, this is part two of a multi-part series where I make mimics, juvenile mimics based on the descriptions from the Forgotten Vault encounter in the Dungeons & Dragons Adventurer magazine. So, just touching on the last episode where we made a torch stand and a torch mimic, in this episode we're going to be making a chandelier piece of terrain and a chandelier mimic. So again, these are juvenile mimics, so they're not taking the forms of treasure chests, and they're not massive, they're not terribly big compared to their full-grown cousins. Now, I'm not going to be showing every single step along the way. I'm presuming a lot of you guys watched the previous episode where I made the torch mimic, so we're just going to breeze over the beginning, but basically to get to where we need to make the chandelier, we're using medium density graphic chipboard, the kind of cardboard you get at the back of a legal pad, inch squares, double them up for strength, super glue them together. We're using matchsticks to make the actual stand, and we use bicarbonate of soda to strengthen the joints. And before you know it, you've got a base for the chandelier. Now, the main difference, however, is we're going to be making a crane-like shape out of matchsticks in order to support the chandelier, rather than in the torch build where we just did a upright wooden post. Now, for the base of the chandelier itself, I'm using these little fake brass cogs that you can get from Amazon. You can get them off eBay. You get them in a lot of arts and crafts stores as well nowadays. I've had this bag for years, and it's the kind of thing that you buy once and chances are it's going to last you a very long time before you use up every single cog in there. But what we want is two cogs, one smaller, one larger, that have got the same overall pattern and are hollow on the inside, so no spokes or support rungs or anything like that. It's just a circle with little, well, cog teeth running around the outside, because this is going to be the center of the chandelier. But if we're making a chandelier, we're going to need some torches or candles or something burning on it. And in this build, we're going to be making candles. Now, I'm not going to pretend that I've invented this technique, because I know I haven't. I think I got this from DM Dave back in the day. Shout out to DM Dave's YouTube channel. But what I would say is have a piece of foam or something that you can stick the cocktail sticks in, so that as the hot glue is drying, they're drying upright. So how do you make candles? How do you actually do this technique? So using a hot glue gun, you want to put a bead of hot glue around about a centimeter from the tip of a cocktail stick, and then you want to start to draw it towards the tip, because that tip, we're going to paint that to be the wick at the center of the candle, and of course the hot glue we're going to be painting to look like the wax of the candle. So if I just show you guys again, it's a bead of hot glue around a centimeter from the tip, maybe like half a centimeter. It's, you know, these candles, they're not very big. They do need to be a little bigger than realistic for what a D&D model would be able to fit in its hand, like 28mm scale, because we want this to be readable on the tabletop. We want to be able to read this from a distance. But again, it's just a bead around and then pulling down with the tip whilst the hot glue is still fluid, as it were, is still malleable. Disclosure up front, some of the footage has been lost, and this video has been made up of recovered footage, but we'll talk about that at the end. But needless to say, you glue the candles to the cogs and use the candles to support the cogs, right? You don't need to add anything else. And I try and put 5 on the base of the big cog and 3 on the base of the small one at the top, because we want a sort of a stepped effect. So what we're doing now is we're going to take a length of modeling chain off screen, and we're going to use this to create the actual hanging effect. Now this is a fiddly bit, okay, because it is really easy to glue the chain to your fingers, glue it to the table, glue it to the the matchstick crane arm, as it were. It's really easy to glue the chain to everything except the actual chandelier where you want it. So just take your time, start with the chandelier base, glue a bit on the big cog just underneath one of the candles, and then reach up feeding the chain through your finger and your thumb until you get to the tip of the crane arm matchstick, and then super glue on there, and then snip it when you are done. Okay? You don't have to try and hold this teeny tiny thing in place and guess how long you're going to need to cut it and glue it. No, glue it and then cut it. It makes life a lot easier. Now, honestly, we're not making these things to be free flowing, live loads, as it were. We're making these to be static and solid pieces of terrain. So we're going to use 3 pieces of chain. We're going to glue them all in place, and then we're going to run a bead of super glue up and down each chain to solidify them, to solidify all the links. Honestly, it is the easiest way to get this to work, because it's hard. It is hard to make chandeliers. They are one of the fiddliest little miniature bits of terrain you will ever make. But trust me, they're worth it when they're done, because they look really good. They look really impressive, and they look right. They look recognizable like a chandelier. There's no ambiguity. But as you know, this is a 2-part episode in a multi-part series where we are making juvenile mimics, so these chandeliers have a secret dark side. So, taking the cogs, because again we're basically repeating all the steps, taking the cogs for the chandelier, we want to bend them. We want to bend them in about sort of, what would that be, like a 75-degree angle or something like that? Yeah, like an open mouth of a creature coming to get you. That's the kind of angle we're going for. Now, we're not making wax candles as the teeth. We're just going to use cocktail sticks and the spikes. So I don't know about you, but whenever I'm using cocktail sticks in builds, I always snip off tons and tons of spikes. So save them, because it's times like this where you can use them. But simply enough, just like with the chandelier, we're going to do 5 glued around the circumference of the big cog, and then 3 around the circumference of the small cog. And think about how you want the teeth of this thing to look. Is this a really open, wide mouth and it's coming to get you, or is it really closed shut and the teeth are quite close together? I'm going somewhere in between. I'd say this is quite open, it's quite aggressive. And positioning is everything, because ultimately, once these things are glued together, you don't get a second chance to try and fiddle with it, as it were. But once everything's dry, glue the smaller cog with teeth to the bigger cog with teeth, and then glue on a tongue. Now, unlike the torch video, I've used green stuff, the 2-part modeling putty, to make a tongue. I've done that off screen. Here's a real simple trick for you guys. If you're ever green stuffing a project and you've finished the bit but you've got some green stuff left over, just squeeze it between your fingers and roll it out into some little worm shapes, because that's what I did with this tongue. I had used this green stuff previously on the torch project, but as it turns out I didn't need as much, so I just made some worms, and there you go. You can always keep these bits for when you need them. So we've got the tongue glued in there, and now we're modeling the actual connection points between, well, just all these little random bits, isn't it? Because right now this does not look like a monster. It doesn't look like a miniature. It just looks like a load of cocktail spikes stuck to some brass cogs and a green tongue. So this is where the modeling putty really takes over, because we are making the suggestion of gums, we're making the suggestion of jaws, of the fibrous muscle between, the sort of upper and lower jaw. The more you add, the more monstrous it will look. The less you have on there, the more it'll look like a chandelier. And this is the thing with mimics, they're somewhere in between. Remember what I said last video, mimics are eyes, teeth, and tongue, in that order. So what do we need on here? We need eyes, we need teeth, and we need a tongue. The teeth are provided by the cocktail stick spikes, the tongue, the big green stuff tongue, and of course we need eyes. Now, once you've, you know, got to a point that you're quite happily with the modeling, we've got to figure out how we're attaching this to our crane, wooden support. I'm using quite a thick paper clip to do this, because ultimately, if you go too small, too thin, there's a risk that this could just snap off. And ultimately, when you put a lot of time and effort into something, you don't want that to happen. We are going to use the bicarbonate of soda trick here to get this to set and to set strong. do not worry about using too much. Unlike with the torch build, where if you used bicarbonate to glue the torch to the, wooden mast, it would just blur it together. In this case, we want it to. Not because the wooden support is the mimic, of course it's not, but because if we don't, there's not going to be enough strength there. And this isn't going to be the mimic's only connection point to that wooden mast. So get a lot of bicarbonate of soda on there, get it set strong. So there you go. So you've got that, you've got the mimic, coming along quite nicely, but it's still missing a few final details. Again, the more you keep this in similar to the actual terrain building, the better it's going to look. The more, kind of believable it is that the chandelier, as it turns out, was a mimic in disguise. So we're using chain, we're using, the cocktail sticks and the brass cogs and all this because that's what we used for the chandelier. And we can have a play with the chain. I like the idea that the mimic itself is the chandelier and the chains, and it's literally just dangling from the ceiling. Looking at using some little squiggly bits of green stuff for the extra tentacles. And again, you can just glue those on anywhere. You don't have to be too specific because it helps sell the illusion of this being quite a fluid, shape-shifting monster. But then once that's all done, take the time, start basing it. Oldest trick in the book, we're using super glue and we're just going to dip it in sand. It sets nearly instantly, and you've even got a bit of drying time. Just, butterfingers here, don't drop it like I do. But you've got a bit of drying time. If you've got a bit too much sand stuck on there, you can just scrape it off and chuck it back in the tub. Because you do get that, you do get clumping sometimes, and you don't necessarily want that. But they are as simple as super glue, spread it around with the tip of the applicator, and then just dunk it in the sand. I always used to be an advocate of using PVA glue and doing it that way, but honestly, this is so much simpler, and I don't know why I've not done this sooner. Probably because super glue's got a lot of fumes to it, so do this with an open window in a well-ventilated room. So as you can see from the torch mimic there, just how quick and easy it is. Unlike with the terrain I tend to leave just on the bare cardboard square bases that we've done, because I paint that to look like, flagstones, actual, dungeon stone groundwork, as it were. With the monsters' bases, I will always sand them, I will always paint them, a dirty brown colour, because that's, ties it in as a miniature with the rest of the creatures that I've created for the D&D. But there you go. If you followed along, you should reach a point where you've created both a chandelier and a mimic chandelier that in the middle of a game you can swap out to trick your players and maybe get a couple of licks in. So let me know what you think in the comments down below. This is the second part in a multi-part series. The next one we're going to be looking at how to make a mimic statue and a mimic pile of rusty armour, and then that completes the squad of juvenile mimics from the encounter. Following the sort of tricks and steps in these videos, honestly, you can turn anything into a mimic. Your imagination is your limit, but hopefully this has been of some inspiration to you. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode. Alright, goodbye. Yeah, so before I forget, I would be remiss if I didn't point out the fact that this video today has only been possible for the program, for the data recovery tool that is Recover, RECUVA. So what is Recover? Because at a first glance it sounds like the dodgiest thing ever, doesn't it? Recover is a tool that allows you to restore files that you had previously deleted, right? It does this by literally searching a folder of your choice and digging up every single file that has ever existed there, and then allows you to choose which ones you want to restore. So for myself, I was able to recover all the video footage that has been used today to make this video that was accidentally deleted after I created the last one, except for one part where I was gluing the candles onto the little brass cogs. Other than that, everything else was recovered using that tool. So honestly, I cannot recommend it enough, considering just how much footage it is actually able to dig up. Because when you shift delete something, normally that's it, isn't it? That's the end. It's all gone. But honestly, regardless of how dodgy the website looks, I do recommend using Recover to the free program. I'm not advocating for the paid for one, but honestly, I do advocate using Recover to download or recover files that have been lost, because it worked. It worked for me, and this video is living proof of that. And so far, I've not found any Russian spyware on my computer, so we're good. So, not sponsored, just wanted to point them out because I know I've been in this situation before now, and I've been up a creek without a paddle. So, being able to use a tool quickly to just restore everything, spot on. That's exactly what I need. So, thank you, Recover, thank you, CC Cleaner, and thank you all for watching today's video.